Bhagavad Gita. Oh, don't record my question.
Go on.
Why did Prabhupada say Bhagavad Gita is the ABC? You mean it's like more complicated than the ABC?
Well, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam and you study the Vedic literatures, or you study Chaitanya Charitamrita, or study Nectar of Devotion, or the books of the Goswamis, then you get quite an idea of what Prabhupada is actually speaking about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a basic foundation of our philosophy. It's a lot more deeply, it's more detail is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, for example. For example, about the three modes of material nature, there's chapter 14, but there's in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it goes into a lot more detail. And the Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses, so it's expanded Bhagavad Gita, but with many examples and many stories to illustrate all the philosophical points in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's why it's known as the ABCs. That's the basic foundation of our philosophy. And then the points are elaborated on in Srimad Bhagavatam and other places. Excuse me, I'm just gonna.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand. How, in what context did he say ABC?
Yeah, so that's the context. So we've been so we're going through, let's chant pranams of Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastai Bhutalesh Mati Bhakti Vedanta Swamti Namane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Vichaline Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pushtatara Satanine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Ram.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, so last week, I was just going over what we covered last week in the introduction. So I bring it up as some questions, see if we can remember or we might know. Prabhupada speaks of that there's many editions of the Bhagavad Gita, and but they give their own interpretation. They give their own interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. So then Prabhupada speaks about the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. Can anyone say what that spirit is? He says the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita in regards to learning the Gita.
It must be learned like Arjuna becoming a surrender to Krishna.
Yeah, that's basically it. That's the spirit of the Gita, is contained in the Gita itself. Yeah, it's explained in the Gita, the actual means and methods for understanding the Bhagavad Gita. And as Mavala Vangalataka correctly said, the means of understanding the Gita is to be in the same mood as Arjuna. So Arjuna is Krishna's friend and devotee. So that's the real, Prabhupada was speaking about that. That's the real spirit of actually understanding the Bhagavad Gita. And then he mentions that, let me just do some adjustments to my screen here. You can still see just the Bhagavad Gita? Just, yeah, okay, 1 second. I'm just got to do some adjustments. I was taking some notes. Hare Krishna. Bear with me. Hare Krishna. Okay, moving some things around. Okay, back with you. Hare Krishna. Sorry about that.
Isn't that slok that Bhagavad Gita should be studied in the association of devotees?
Not exactly in those words, but it mentions the qualification. Krishna mentions in the 4th chapter, I'm explaining this knowledge unto you because you are my devotee as well as my friend.
Yeah.
And you are not envious of me. Therefore, you can understand the Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada mentions that this is the spirit of understanding Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, as Arjuna understood, not to give some interpretation outside of the understanding of Arjuna, who ultimately surrendered to Krishna. Yeah? And then Prabhupada spoke of the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself.
Mhm.
And this is confirmed. How is this confirmed?
Doesn't he say like Devala and Asita and all those type of
Yeah, that's correct. In other words, evam parampara praptam.
yes.
Parampara praptam. Yeah, that's how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's confirmed by all, as you said, all these great, all these devotees, and even Prabhupada mentions Shankaracharya as well. Remember, we had a little chat about Shankaracharya, how his name got mentioned there. And as we know, he's actually devotee of Krishna. His name was mentioned. Yeah, and there's different types of persons. There's the Gyanis, there's the yogis, there's the karmis, and there's a bhakta. So only the bhakta can understand the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So it mentions again, Bhagavad Gita is understood by those who have the similar qualities as Arjuna. So they're in a direct relationship with the Lord. And then Prabhupada spoke about rasa, or relationship with the Lord. And he gave a brief explanation of the different relationships with the Lord. So he mentioned passive, shantaras. Then he mentioned active, dasyaras, and friendship, sakyaras, parent, and vatsalyaras, and madhuryaras, conjugal love. So he gave a brief mention of the relationships with Krishna. Then he mentions that Arjuna was actually in a relationship as a sakya, as a friend. Yeah. But then he mentions it's not like the friendships you find in this material world. Yeah. It's of a different substance and a different nature, the relationship between Arjuna and Krishna. And then Prabhupada then mentions that actually every jiva has a relationship with Krishna. And he uses a word to describe that relationship. If anyone can name that word.
Swarup? Siddha Swarup?
Yes, correct. Yeah, very nice. It's Sarup. Everyone has their particular, very individual relationship with the Lord. Yeah. And then again, Prabhupada mentions how Arjuna accepted the Bhagavad Gita. He accepted Krishna as the Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitam Pam Uttamam, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam, Adi Ejam, Adi Devam Vijamabum. So he accepted Krishna as the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. He mentioned him as the original, transcendental, unborn, the greatest person. I think somewhere, not here, but it mentions somewhere in the beginning, somewhere in Bhagavad Gita, perhaps we read it already, that at least one should theoretically, to understand Bhagavad Gita, one should at least theoretically accept Krishna as God. Otherwise, it ain't going to make no sense at all. So at least for the time, at least, okay, let's accept Krishna as God then. That's what it's saying here. So then we can understand it. So, all right. So then he mentions one should take up the Bhagavad Gita in the spirit of, what comes next? The spirit of devotion, yeah. One should not, then Prabhupada then begins to speak about against Mayavad philosophy. We should never think we're equal to Krishna, or that Krishna is an ordinary person, or even a great personality. He's much above that. Yeah. And anyone can tell us what the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is? If you're looking through the introduction, you can cheat if you want. Cheating's allowed. You can look in the introduction. It's got pinpoint where I'm taking notes from.
Was that to reestablish the parampara?
Then
Or
yes and no, but more no.
re-establish religion?
Yeah.
Well, kind
religion.
of, but it's to deliver mankind from nescience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he mentions every man is in difficulty, just like Arjuna. He's in difficulty. Every man is in the same difficulty. Yeah. And then Prabhupada mentions about our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. I thought that was a nice sentence. We're in the atmosphere of non-existence. We are illusion. Then he mentions it's one of Prabhupada's main preaching points is that we are supposed to inquire about our position, about our awkward position. And we're supposed to find solutions. And he mentions another nice statement here as well, that we are swallowed by the tigress of nescience. So swallowed by the tigress of nescience. Then he mentions how the Lord is very kind. So that's why he spoke Bhagavad Gita out of his kindness. I better skip some of his notes, otherwise we'll take up the whole class.
No, it's good. It's good. It's recapping.
Okay, yeah, so recap, I'll just go over a little bit quicker. And then he mentioned the 5 basic truths of Bhagavad Gita. So who can say those 5 basic truths?
Time, the Jiva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna.
Yes.
Karma.
Yes.
And material nature.
Correct. Yeah, and you're correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So he mentions the subject. Much of the Bhagavad Gita deals with these 5. Then he mentions of those 5, 3. Let me see. The Ishvara, the Jiva, and Prakriti. I guess. Yeah.
Only the karma changes.
Yeah. Karma is temporary. Yeah, of these 5, the Lord, the living entities, and material nature and time are eternal, except karma. Remember we mentioned that. It's a good job. Karma is not eternal. Yeah. And then coming up to where we left off last week, the position of the Ishvara, and he compared that the Jiva is conscious, but this Lord is supremely conscious. Do you remember I gave that example last week of we have that to a small degree, we are conscious of our body. Remember that example? And the universe is the Lord's body. So his consciousness is spread throughout this universe as our consciousness is spread from our head to our toe. So his consciousness is spread everywhere. So the Lord is supremely conscious. Yeah. So the Jiva cannot possibly claim that he is the same. All right. And that brings us to this week's reading. Find a bookmark. And we left off from here last week. Yeah. So should we go? So let's pick it up from here. Mother Lavangalataki can read, then followed by Mother Vishalni. She has a hand.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Prabhu, which page is that, please?
Yeah, 11 on mine. But
It's 9.
Yeah, different Bhagavad Gitas will have a different page. Anupma?
Yeah. Shall I start?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The distinction between the Jiva and the Ishvara will be explained in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is Kshetragya, conscious, as is the living being. But the living being is conscious of his particular body, whereas the Lord is conscious of all bodies. Because he lives in the heart of every living being, he is conscious of the psychic movements of the particular Jivas. We should not forget this. It is also explained in that the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is living in everyone's heart as Ishvara, as the controller, and that he is giving directions for the living entity to act as he desires. The living entity forgets what to do. First of all, he makes a determination to act in a certain way, and then he is entangled in the actions and reactions of his own karma. After giving up one type of body, he enters another type of body, as we take off and put on clothes. As the soul thus migrates, he suffers the actions and reactions of his past activities. These activities can be changed when the living being is in the mode of goodness, insanity, and understands what sort of activities he should adopt. If he does so, then all the actions and reactions of his past activities can be changed. Consequently, karma is not eternal. Therefore, we stated that of the 5 items, Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, time, and karma, 4 are eternal, whereas karma is not eternal. The Supreme Conscious Ishvara is similar to the living entity in this way. Both the consciousness of the Lord and that of the living entity are transcendental. It is not that consciousness is generated by the association of matter. That is a mistaken idea. The theory that consciousness develops under certain circumstances of material combination is not accepted in the Bhagavad Gita. Consciousness may be pervertedly reflected by the covering of material circumstances, but just as light reflected through colored glass may appear to be a certain color, but the consciousness of the Lord is not materially affected. Lord Krishna says, Maya Yakshena Prakriti. When he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected. If he was so affected, he would be unfit to speak on transcendental matters, as he does in the Bhagavad Gita. One cannot say anything about the transcendental world without being free from material contaminated consciousness. So the Lord is not materially contaminated. Our consciousness at the present moment, however, is materially contaminated. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that we have to purify this materially contaminated consciousness. In pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of the Ishvara, and that will make us happy. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Rather, our activities are to be purified, and purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man, but such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or that of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the 3 modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point our consciousness is contaminated. When we are materially contaminated, we are called conditioned. False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who is absorbed in the thought of bodily conceptions cannot understand his situation. Bhagavad Gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily conception of life, and Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. One must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalist. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Mukti, or liberation, means freedom from material consciousness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, also the definition of liberation is given. Muktir hitvanyata rupam varupena vyavastiti. Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. All the instructions of Bhagavad Gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness. And therefore we find at the last stage of Gita's instructions that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord, but for us there is an affinity of being affected by the inferior modes, but the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls.
Okay, thank you, Mo. Perhaps just stop there. We'll ask Mo Vishal to read. Any reflections or comments on that? Given again a basic outline of our philosophy of Krishna consciousness, we have a tendency to be overcome by Maya. Krishna never ever is overcome by Maya. He's always transcendental. Also, the devotees are also transcendental. Right? Unless there's any questions, we can ask Mother Vishalni to read. Move the page. That's it.
What
You
is
okay?
this? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mother.
What is this consciousness? This consciousness is I am. Then what am I? In contaminated consciousness, I am means I am the Lord of all. I survey, I am the enjoyer. The world revolves because every living being thinks that he is the Lord and creator of the material world. Material consciousness has two psychic divisions. One is that I am the creator, and the other is that I am the enjoyer. But actually, the Supreme Lord is both the creator and the enjoyer. And the living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is neither the creator nor the enjoyer, but a cooperator. He is the created and the enjoyed. For instance, a part of the machine cooperates with the whole machine. A part of the body cooperates with the whole body. The hands, legs, eyes, and so on are all parts of the body, but they are not actually the enjoyers. The stomach is the enjoyer. The legs move, the hands supply food, the teeth chew, and all parts of the body are engaged in satisfying the stomach because the stomach is the principal factor that nourishes the body's organization. Therefore, everything is given to the stomach. One nourishes the tree by watering its roots, and one nourishes the body by feeding the stomach. For if the body is to be kept in a healthy state, then the parts of the body must cooperate to feed the stomach. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer.
That's you probably recognize that example. Prabhupada gives that example often. And often this example is given in a class, and sometimes devotees explain it in a comical way. For example, the rascula, or the hand is trying to enjoy the rascula. No, there's a means and there's a way to actually, there's a means and there's a way to be happy. And that's to dovetail ourselves properly. And he gives a nice example, isn't it? I think elsewhere, you might give it here, of a part of a machine. Did he describe that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Part of a machine doesn't work if it comes away from the machine. Oh yeah, here. Part of the machine cooperates with the whole machine. But if it's separated, it cannot function properly. So if our life or our society is disconnected from Krishna, then it's not going to function properly. I mean, that's why we see so many reversals, or so many disasters, so many reversals, so many anxieties, so many depressions, so many disappointments. It's because everyone's not connected with Krishna. So we have Bhagavad Gita's teaching to reconnect with Krishna. I'm sorry, Mother, I interrupted your reading. I couldn't help but bring that out, but carry on.
Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer and the creator, and we, as the subordinate living beings, are meant to cooperate to satisfy him. This cooperation will actually help us, just as food taken by the stomach will help all other parts of the body. If the fingers of the hand think that they should take the food themselves instead of giving it to the stomach, then they will be frustrated. The central figure of creation and of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, and the living entities are cooperators. By cooperation, they enjoy. The relation is also like that of the master and the servant. If the master is fully satisfied, then the servant is satisfied. Similarly, the Supreme Lord should be satisfied, although the tendency to become the creator and the tendency to enjoy the material world are there also in the living entities, because these tendencies are there in the Supreme Lord, who has created the manifested cosmic world.
Any questions about that? It seems like it's unfair. We have a tendency to enjoy the material world because that tendency is in the creator. So therefore, we have that same tendency. Similarly, the Supreme Lord should be satisfied. Although the tendency to become the creator and the tendency to enjoy the material world, it's also in the living entities, because these tendencies are there in the Supreme Lord, who has created the manifested cosmic world. Is that okay with everyone? So we have to curb that tendency to be God.
Yeah.
Gross or subtle. I mean, that's why we're here. I mean, that's why we've been given the playground of the material world. Just like a mother, Prabhupada mentions this in the purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam, just like a mother may give her daughter, or these days may give her son a pram or doll's house. But let's say in traditional, the mother would generally give the young daughter, sometimes she buys a plastic cooker, what they used to. So then the young daughter imitates the mother. Sometimes she even wears her shoes. So in this way, we've been given this world of matter to try and, in an illusory way, try and act out our existences as the enjoyer and the controllers. Yes, Mother Lavanga, I cut you off. You were saying.
Yeah, no, it's probably a ridiculous question. It's probably
Sure
not
it's not.
logical. I was just thinking, if we have a tendency to enjoy the material world, although we are servants of Krishna, I was thinking, well, because Krishna has the tendency to enjoy, but he is the supreme enjoyer. So why would we have this tendency? I mean, it seems like a design fault, if you know
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean.
what I was.
I like that.
That's what I was bringing up, because then that's why I was mentioning, because of our independence, that we turned away and we desire to be in the same position as the Lord.
Well, that's madness.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a perfect conclusion to come to. We're all mad in this material world. We're mad. That's exactly it. We're mad. We're trying to be Krishna, gross or subtle. Generally, it's more subtle. For some people, it can be gross. But generally, yeah, we're trying to be the supreme controller, the supreme master. Yeah. And so, therefore, we've been given this material world to try and act out that madness or that illusion. Yeah.
It's because it doesn't interfere with our independence, doesn't it?
Sorry, say that again.
Because Krishna does not interfere with our independence.
No, he will not directly interfere with it, but he will very much try to attract us. Therefore, he comes and he exhibits his pastimes here so that we become attracted to him, so that we personally choose to go towards him. But to do that, we have the Krishna. That's why Krishna comes and he manifests the spiritual world here. And also he comes as he sends his devotees also to teach and to guide us. Yeah.
So basically, Prabhu, we act as a mad person because it's a lack of knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the opposite of as ignorance of our constitutional relationship as the servant of the Lord. And actually, and that's how, I'm sure we've all experienced that, is that's actually how we can be happy. I know before I joined, I mean, I tried my best to enjoy. I did many things to try and be happy. But when I took up Krishna consciousness, then I experienced happiness I couldn't even imagine existed just by serving Krishna. Yeah. So actually, there is no real happiness acting. You could say there's no real happiness in a mental institution. Yeah, this illusory concept of happiness. But real happiness comes is when we do link up with Krishna again.
That's right.
Because that's our constitutional position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mother Sharada's agreed. Yes. Yes. Whenever she distributes books, she feels happy again.
Yes.
Whenever she's standing on Oxford Street, That's it. That's a constitutional position, and she's happy. She can't wait to get out the house, get on the street. Distribute books, yeah, because then she's dovetailed with Krishna, serving Krishna's will. Yeah.
Prabhu, I've got a question.
Yes.
Because of this controlling and enjoying, we must have exhausted it to come to the path of Krishna consciousness. But how is there this hand of Krishna in it to attract us to this path, or did we do it naturally within?
But it's a lot of it is there is Krishna's grace and mercy. I'm thinking of the example in the Srimad Bhagavatam of Pingala, the prostitute. She had like what we call a Pingala moment. If we know the story, basically, she was hoping to attract some men, and no one was interested in her, in what she was offering, in her. For one point, and it says, by the grace of the Super Soul, at one point she reflected on what she was doing, and she became completely disgusted and then completely detached.
Yeah.
And her life transformed more or less in a moment. And she became free of all anxiety. So that was specifically the Super Soul. And then we can then understand that was because of some previous spiritual or bhakti unmukhi sukriti, some previous devotional credits. Because everyone suffers in this world, but only a few people turn towards Krishna. And that's mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? 4 kinds of persons turn towards Krishna. And we'll be reading about that.
Chapter 4.
So you got pious and the impious. So the pious persons, this is devotional piety. So yeah, as you mentioned, after many births and deaths, one actually surrenders to Krishna, but that surrender will only take place if one gets the association of devotees. Yeah. Bahunam Janman Ande. Yeah. Yeah. Because if suffering automatically meant that everyone would take up Krishna consciousness, then there'd be a lot more people in our movement than there is now. But it's only a few, because some of those who are pious and those who have got devotional piety, then they become attracted to the principles of bhakti. Otherwise, you'd be amazed at how many millions of births, or perhaps for us, or how many millions of births one can continue suffering. Especially for impious people who take birth in abominable species. And Krishna speaks about that in 16th chapter. He says, birth after birth, they take birth in abominable species.
We must have done some pious activities. We must have done some pious activities.
Yeah, we must something.
In the last birth, and we had in some sacrifices.
Yeah. Somewhere so down the line.
That Krishna attracted us towards him.
Yeah. So somewhere down the line, we happen to bump into bhakti, knowingly or unknowingly. Somewhere where we came in contact, we heard the holy name, or that's so that should be. That's devotee's mood as well. Is that we preach, but we don't expect everyone we preach to actually become a devotee. Not in this life. Some very rare will, but we preach to give them bhakti or mukhi sukriti as well. We get them to chant the holy name, and we make friends with them, and they feel favorable towards devotees. Then that will accumulate in perhaps in the next life, or in 2 lives from then, they take up bhakti. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we're on this paragraph here, unless there's any other questions on that or comments. I think we're here. I've been scrolling back and forward. Is it we're here?
Yes, we are there.
Okay. Yeah, carry on, Mother. Let's.
We shall find, therefore, in this Bhagavad Gita that the complete whole is comprised of the supreme controller, the controlled living entities, the cosmic manifestation, eternal time and karma, or activities, and all of these are explained in this text. All of these taken completely from the complete whole, and the complete whole is called the supreme absolute truth. The complete whole and the complete absolute truth are the complete personality of Godhead. Don't understand that bit. Complete absolute and complete whole.
What's the can anyone tell us? Prabhupada is paraphrasing a verse here from one of our books.
Is it Ishopanishad or Nectar of Instruction?
Correct. Ishopanishad. Anyone know the verse? It's quite a tongue twister.
Yeah, complete whole and
everything that
the whole thing.
Yeah, everything that emanates from the complete whole is complete in itself because it's coming from the complete whole, who is complete. Yeah. So everything that's coming from the complete whole is also complete.
So the absolute truth and complete whole is one and the same, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, let me just go back with it. The complete
whole and the
complete whole truth. And the complete absolute truth are the complete. Yeah. That's a definition of the supreme personality of Godhead. He's completely complete.
Yeah, got it.
You need to join Jagannath in his room.
Yeah, you get lots of prasads and ginger.
Yeah.
You'll get spoiled.
I'll have to go on the cart with Jagannath from Rath Yatra next to him. Yeah, carry on.
All manifestations are due to his different energies. He is the complete whole. It is also explained in the Gita that impersonal Brahman is also subordinate to the complete Supreme Person. Brahmano hi pratishtatham. Brahman is most explicitly explained in the Brahma Sutra to be like the rays of the sunshine. The impersonal Brahman is the shining rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is incomplete realization of the absolute whole, and so also is the conception of Paramatma. In the 15th chapter, it shall be seen that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottam, is above both impersonal Brahman and the partial realization of Paramatma. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Sachidananda Vigraha. The Brahma Samhita begins in this way: Ishva Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adi Govinda Sarva Karanam. Govinda Krishna is the cause of all causes. He is the primal cause, and he is the very form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Impersonal Brahman realization is the realization of his Sat, eternity feature. Paramatma realization is the realization of Sat Chit, eternal knowledge. But realization of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is realization of all the transcendental features, Sat, Chit, and eternity, knowledge, and bliss in complete Vigraha form. People with less... Shall I continue?
Yeah, let's just time check. Yeah, can read another 2 paragraphs and then we'll let someone else read.
People with less intelligence consider the supreme truth to be impersonal, but he is the transcendental person. And this is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. Nitya Nitya Nam Chetnanas. Chetnanam. Gatha Upanishad 2:13. As we are all individual living beings and have our individuality, the supreme absolute truth is also in the ultimate issue, a person, and the realization of the personality of Godhead is realization of all of the transcendental features in his complete form. The complete whole is not formless. If he is formless, or if he is less than any other thing, then he cannot be the complete whole. The complete whole must have everything within our experience and beyond our experience. Otherwise, it cannot be complete. The complete whole, personality of Godhead, has immense potencies. Parashya Sakti Vividhava Suryate. How Krishna is acting in different potencies is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. This phenomenal world of material world in which we are placed is also complete in itself, because the 24 elements of which this material world is a temporary manifestation, according to the Sankhya philosophy, are completely adjusted to produce complete resources, which are necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. There is nothing extraneous, nor is there anything needed. This manifestation has its own time fixed by the energy of the Supreme Whole. And when the time is complete, these temporary manifestations will be annihilated by the complete arrangement of the complete. There is complete facility for the small complete units, namely the living entities, to realize the complete, and all sorts of incompleteness are experienced due to the incomplete knowledge of the complete. So Bhagavad Gita contains the complete knowledge of Vedic wisdom.
Okay, we'll just stop there. How many times did Prabhupada mention complete? This is an aspect of poetry, see, where he's really expanding and using this word to explain the philosophy. This word complete, it's a simple word, but it completely explains the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he finishes it. So the essence of all of that is, so Bhagavad Gita is a complete knowledge of Vedic wisdom. Yeah, everything's complete. In that sense, although Bhagavad Gita is the ABCs, you only need to understand Bhagavad Gita to actually perfect your life.
The whole thing, yes.
It's complete.
Mm-hmm.
You could even say one verse is complete, Doesn't mean the Bhagavatam is not complete. That is also complete. So anyway, so any questions about complete?
But Bhagavad Gita gives us philosophy, because it's an Upanishad. But we get more information from, the stories and everything from Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we understand Bhagavad Gita more. Is that right?
So last part, so we have to understand the Bhagavad Gita more.
Yeah, because it gives us concepts, and these concepts are expanded more in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, but Srimad Bhagavatam comes with stories.
Yes, but with this philosophy it comes. So there is an interlink between Bhagavad Gita being concept, because it doesn't give you many stories in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
So we have to refer to Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. And also, I think described Jiva Goswami explains, he does one verse that very nicely glorifies the Bhagavatam. That for instance, as you mentioned, the Upanishads teach like a teacher. Also, there's another type of way of learning, and that's through stories, and that's considered to be like I think perhaps I'll find a quote for next week, because it's a very nice quote. It takes some time to dig out now, but sometimes you learn by loving, or the Bhagavatam instructs in different ways. Bhagavad Gita is just philosophy, but Bhagavatam gives philosophy, and it also instructs one like a friend. Bhagavad or the Vedas is more like a teacher. You do this, you do that. But Bhagavatam often it preaches or explains to one like a loving friend, and therefore it gives Leela and pastimes. So it's more gentle. So I'm just paraphrasing a verse by Jiva Goswami, which is highlighting a point that you made, but I'm not doing it much justice. But I try and it's very nice. It describes the way that the Bhagavatam teaches. But you're right, it's a very nice observation that Bhagavad Gita is philosophy. It's zero stories.
Because I mean, sometimes it's very difficult to get the story of whatever Bhagavad Gita is pointing at. We should know our Srimad Bhagavatam by heart to connect them together.
Yeah, so that's what will come. As because some of you have been reading Prabhupada's books for many years, so after a few years, then you can do that. You can, like, for instance, we was hearing Prabhupada was paraphrasing the verse from the Ishopanishad. So because we know Ishopanishad, then we can read that, and we know Prabhupada's referring to Ishopanishad. And then you'll see that. Then you can go both ways. You can be reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you can remember, oh, this is a Bhagavad Gita verse, substantiates this story in the Bhagavatam. Then you can go further. Actually, this is illustrated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And actually, this is also in the Nectar of Devotion. So in this way, you can go, you can find similar points you can use. Sometimes Prabhupada does it. Actually, Prabhupada, when he's writing, everything he writes is based on Sastra. It's based on Vedas, and it's based on the verse. But sometimes often he doesn't mention the verse. But if you know the verses, then you can understand he's referring to this particular verses, say from 7th canto of the 1st chapter, Srila Vyasadeva trance, yeah, or the 11th canto, 10th canto, and that's called studying. That's called like. It always amazes me if sometimes if I read Jiva Goswami, he hasn't got folio, he hasn't got Veda base, but to illustrate philosophical points, he quotes from everywhere. He quote an obscure verse from the 3rd canto, an obscure verse from the 8th canto, then they go to the 11th canto, then they go to the 12th canto, and he tie in all these philosophical points by going all over the Bhagavatam. And he hasn't, it's not as if he's got a folio we can put in search. It's all in the sky of his heart, So yeah, you can, that's what reading and studying is about, making cross references and showing different examples. So we can do that as we're reading. Some of you who've read Prabhupada's books for some time, or you've been hearing classes for many years, then if you recognize what's being read as a point that's made somewhere else, and you can remember, it's good to share it. Oh, Prabhupada's saying this here, but I just heard a class 2 weeks ago, and Maharaj was saying this, or I read this here, I read this there. It kind of expands out the discussion, and it's nice. It's nice to do. That's like scientists, analyzing Prabhupada's words, So what I'll do is I shall find that, perhaps I shall find it after the reading today, and I'll share it with Chandravali. She can share it with you. Okay. It's nice. It describes how the Bhagavatam teaches. It's like a teacher, a friend, and a lover. These 3 examples are given, different ways of teaching, and Bhagavatam employs all 3, as a stern teacher, as a friend, and as a lover. And he explains it. So anyway, but I've forgotten exactly the exact explanation he gives. So I don't want to speculate anymore. All right.
Yeah.
Time check. 8 minutes left. Mother Chandravali, you would like to read? You have your hand raised there.
Yeah, can do. Well, where are we though?
We've just completed the complete. Now we're here.
Complete, yes. All the Vedic knowledge, yeah? Is that the one? Yes.
That's correct, yeah.
All Vedic knowledge is infallible. And Hindus accept Vedic knowledge to be complete and infallible. For example, cow dung is the stool of an animal, and according to Smriti, or Vedic injunction, if one touches the stool of an animal, he has to take a bath to purify himself. But in the Vedic scriptures, cow dung is considered to be a purifying agent. One might consider this to be contradictory, but it is accepted because it is Vedic injunction. And indeed, by accepting this, one will not commit a mistake. Subsequently, it has been proved by modern science that cow dung contains all antiseptic properties. So Vedic knowledge is complete because it is above all doubts and mistakes. And Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is not a question of research. Our research work is imperfect because we are researching things with imperfect senses. We have to accept perfect knowledge, which comes down as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita by the parampara, disciplic succession. We have to receive knowledge from the proper source in disciplic succession, beginning with the supreme spiritual master, the Lord himself, and handed down to the succession of spiritual masters. Arjuna, student who took lessons from Lord Shri Krishna, accepts everything that he has without contradicting him. One is not allowed to accept one portion of Bhagavad Gita and not another. No, we must accept Bhagavad Gita without interpretation, without deletion, and without our own whimsical participation in the matter. The Gita should be taken as the most perfect presentation of Vedic knowledge. Vedic knowledge is received from transcendental sources, and the first words were spoken by the Lord himself. The words spoken by the Lord are called apurusheya, meaning that they are different from words spoken by a person of a mundane world who is infected with 4 defects. A mundaner, 1, is sure to commit mistakes, 2, is invariable be illusioned, 3, has the tendency to cheat others, and 4, is limited by imperfect senses. With these 4 imperfections, one cannot deliver perfect information of all-pervading knowledge.
Yeah, just for your interest, these 4 defects, this is actually given by Jiva Goswami. I was reading the Tattva Sandarbha, and the Tattva Sandarbha establishes all the Sandarbhas, and the aim is to establish the Srimad Bhagavatam as the Praman, as the means to understand the absolute truth. And it's Jiva Goswami, for interest, who gives these 4 defects as to why we should go to the perfect source, which is the Bhagavatam, just in case you was interested in that. That's it. It's coming from Jiva Goswami. Okay. Any questions or comments there? That small section. Okay. Can we read the next paragraph? Perhaps we can stop there. Next paragraph.
Vedic knowledge is not imparted by such defective living entities. It was imparted unto the heart of Brahma, the first created living beings, and Brahma in his turn disseminated this knowledge to his son and disciples, as he originally received it from the Lord. The Lord is Purnam, all perfect, and there is no possibility of his becoming subjected to the laws of material nature. One should therefore be intelligent enough to know that the Lord is the only proprietor of everything in the universe, and that he is the original creator, the creator of Brahma. In the 11th chapter, the Lord is addressed as Patitamaha, because Brahma is addressed as, Pitamaha, the grandfather, and is the creator of he is the creator of the grandfather. So no one should claim to be the proprietor of anything, one should accept only things which are set aside for him by the Lord and his quota for his maintenance.
Okay, perhaps we'll pause there. So that's last sentence is also from
Ishopanishad.
Ishopanishad. Yes, one should only set those things set aside as his quota. And Prabhupada is quoting from throughout the whole Bhagavad Gita here, in practically every paragraph. There's a verse that describes Krishna as glorified as a grandmother, the father, the seed-giving father, etc. So, all right. So, any last questions or comments on this? Great knowledge to, yeah. All right. Let's see. Hope you don't mind. Stop a couple of minutes early today. I have to.
You can rest your nose.
Yeah, I need to rest. I'm a bit tired, but a couple of minutes early. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us, and let me bookmark down here. Let me put a bookmark. So tomorrow, isn't it? Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, we're reading again. So looking forward to that. And I was just looking through. Let's just see how many pages we have to go. Such a wonderful, deep philosophy Prabhupada's giving here. See. This might take about a couple of months to get through the introduction. Scroll, see all the pages here. It's wonderful. You should all get a certificate after just doing the introduction. So then that's the introduction. Then we have the slip of succession. Then we begin with Dharma, etc., Kura, etc., Samavita, Yukta. So by that time, we'd all be so excited to actually start the Bhagavad Gita, where we on the edge of our seats, and a whole build-up, a whole wonderful build-up of what we've got to look forward to in the philosophy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Remember, we don't want the certificate. Remember what I said? You have to spice it with bhav and prema. So that's what we want.
All right. I might be lacking in that regard, I'm afraid.
Just prema, I thought it'll be maha.
Let's try our best.
Spice
Right.
it.
So,
Bhav and prema.
yeah, it comes from Bhagavad Gita. Actually, Prabhupada says it can be obtained. You know, there's different means. It can come from the spiritual master. It can come from the holy name. It can come from Krishna. And it can come from the Bhagavad Gita itself.
What about Bhagavatam?
Yeah, it can come from the Bhagavatam directly itself. Yeah.
That's what I've heard as well.
This whole discussion. All right, let's stop there then and look forward to tomorrow at 6 o'clock, and we'll continue going through this wonderful introduction of Srila Prabhupada to Bhagavad Gita. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Wonderful evening. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.